Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Thanks for stopping by. Love it when you do. I love doing this for you, as I've told you. I love doing it for myself, but I love doing it for you too. So let's talk about something in the news recently. Oil, good old crude oil. OPEC, the bad guys. The bad guys got all the good stuff. You ever wonder that? I mean, watch an old James Bond movie, all the bad guys had all the good stuff. Watch old Batman TV shows, right? The Joker and the Penguin. They had all that good stuff. Batman had good stuff too, though. So I guess, and I'm a Batman guy, as you well know. Not so much on Superman, but Batman. But let's talk about oil. Come on. Got my ADD in there kicking in. Oil. OPEC is squeezing and driving the prices up. So what did President Trump do? He said he's going to start making it easier for the U.S. oil producers to, pardon the pun, flood the market. And that's the word he used, too. Good in theory. You know, usually I'm right in there with what the president wants to do. This one, not so much. And follow the bouncing ball here. You've heard me talk about Williston, South Carolina, and areas in Pennsylvania and Louisiana and Texas where we drill oil. They're pretty much shut down. To restart them is costly. They don't produce as much as they did. We've sort of scaled back on them. Why? Because there was no call for it. Because OPEC dropped the prices of the barrel of oil so much, it wasn't cost effective to buy U.S. oil. And I told you back then, last summer, it's very easy to manipulate the price of a barrel of oil. OPEC's infrastructure has been paid for 10, 20 million times over. They could sell a barrel of oil for a penny. We can't. So what's going to happen now is, and there's a great quote here, U.S. oil is going to be back on the market. And there's a quote from a trader who remained anonymous, but he trades in the Middle East. U.S. oil is offered everywhere. This trader regularly buys Russian oil and Caspian Sea crude and has recently started purchasing U.S. oil. It puts local grade oil, the oil from the Caspian Sea and Russian oil, under a lot of pressure. Now, U.S. oil output is expected to hit 10.7 billion barrels this year, rivaling Russia and Saudi Arabia. This year. In the U.S., supplies sent to Europe are set to reach an all-time high, roughly about 2.2 million trones, which is a freighter. And I don't know these terms that well, but this is what it is. Now, our U.S. oil is about $68 a barrel now. Think about that. $68 a barrel. I told you last summer it cost $84 to make. Big difference. Okay? You're losing $16 a barrel. How long can you sustain your business if you're losing $16 per unit? We'll get back to that in a minute. So what will happen is the crude oil from the United States will be $68 a barrel, and they'll sell a ton of it. And then what happens? When they can't replenish it. Well, let's say this fellow who's a trader in the Mediterranean, the Caspian, he goes and he stops buying Saudi oil, and he stops buying Russian oil, and he starts buying American oil. And it's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. And then there is no oil to buy because we can't produce on a par with our demand. Remember the old supply and demand curve in the economics class. I'll give you a better example. You know, I'm a big Met fan. Mets stunk last year. Nobody went to the games. I'd sit there by myself. Well, actually, me and Chanel. But that's okay. But this year, they're off to a pretty good start. Weather notwithstanding, you're seeing more people at the game. And if they continue to win, the place will be crowded. Now, you and I both know they're not going to continue to win because they're cursed. And I don't believe in curses, but I do with the New York Mets and the New York Knicks, too. But that we'll talk about another day. By the end of the summer, there'll be no more demand for those tickets. And Fred Wilpon can't give them away. But unlike oil, those tickets are already sold. You can't produce enough oil to outpace OPEC. You can't compete by putting your oil in the market, all you'll do is you'll deplete our sources, and then we'll be at the mercy of OPEC. And then it could be $188 a barrel. And don't think they wouldn't do it, because they have been manipulating the oil market since the 60s. And I've pointed this out chapter and verse over and over again. Go back to Dante's Inferno.nyc and look at some of my writings and speakings and rantings on oil. Double oil's in trouble. It's another good one I wrote. Very good. You will see places like Italy, France, all over Europe, and Asia too. If they buy into buying American oil, they're going to get hurt. Simple as that. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. What you can and should do, President Trump, you want to compete with the OPEC nations? Cut a deal. Didn't you write that book, The Art of the Deal? Cut a deal. What do the OPEC oil producing nations need from us? And we'll set some prices for them, predicated upon them setting prices for oil. We'll get out of the oil business. Get the hell out of their way. Or just produce some for ourselves. Keep what we have. Keep the infrastructure going. Keep the jobs that we've created for it. We've only lost about 65, 70% of those new oil jobs. And don't believe me, go Google Williston, South Dakota, and see what's going on. Where these people were making hand over fist, and now they're struggling, and all the infrastructure in the cities and towns are done, but now they have to be paid for. There's the problem. Infrastructure costs will sink your ship every time. Every time. You got to be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. We're not an oil-producing nation. Could we be? Sure. I'm not a geologist. But I know fracking is clearly an option. I know Fort McHenry, Alberta, in Canada, has a plethora of oil. And the Obama administration shut that down because of the EPA. And when he did it, I said, I didn't know Alberta was one of the 50 states, and why our EPA is up there. Drill the pipeline. That's why we bought Alaska. Well, one of the reasons, the real reason is to protect us from Russia. But, the big scam was, the oil up there. Well, you built the pipeline, you don't use it. If you want to get in the oil business, get it on a small way. Produce oil for ourselves. Stop selling our oil to Japan. Stop selling our oil all over the world. And start fracking as opposed to drilling oil. Fracking is safer and easier when it's done correctly. And just like anything else, don't let anybody that wants to get in and be a fracker have a fracking license. Put them through the test. Make them pay for an entry into the fracking business. You don't just let anybody do. It's like opening up a lemonade stand. Vet them, train them, teach them, and make sure they have big-time insurance policies when they make a mistake. Not like our friends at BP. Remember them? Look, there's a lot of ways around the oil problem. But I say this. Cut a deal. That's what Trump does. He cuts deals. Lock in prices. Are you always going to get the rock bottom? No. Are you always going to get the top of the top for yours? No. Make deals that we can live with on a go-forward basis. Look, the man does a great job, in my opinion. And many of yours as well. Unfortunately, this time I think he might be in an area where he doesn't really understand as well as maybe he should. And maybe his advisors shouldn't. Shame that Rex Tillerson is no longer in the administration. I mean, didn't he know anything about oil? Was that ExxonMobil, aren't they in the oil business? Just saying. All right, I'm out. I'll see you next week.